What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hey, today I'm going to be reacting to how the UK is becoming a third world economy. Now, I did put a poll out and asked you guys about political topics or hot topics, and it came in third of content that you guys want to see, and a couple of people commented that want me to react to everything, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a video about this, just kind of observe and see what's going on. Not British, so, I don't really have much of a say in it, but we have experienced some issues with our economy here in America, and I'm just curious. I've watched quite a few videos on the UK by now, and most of them are enlightening and positive about the country, and I love those, and I love viewing all of the advances that you guys have done with public transit and social medicine and all the good stuff. But I was literally just scrolling through my homepage on YouTube, and I saw this video, and I was just like, I'm curious. What's going on? Let's see what this is all about. So hopefully this one doesn't ruffle too many feathers. I don't even know if I'm gonna post it after watching the video. We'll see. So if you're seeing this, I thought, okay, it's okay, I'll put it out. If you guys enjoyed my channel, go ahead and hit the like button. Stick around, subscribe. I'm putting a video out every single day right now, and hopefully we can get to doing a couple more in the near future. So without further ado, let's get started.
London, the city of dreams and one of the wealthiest urban areas in the world. Its economy is worth roughly £508 billion, which
Holy
equals $652 billion. If it were an independent state, London would rank as the 22nd largest economy in the world, precisely above Argentina and Sweden. However,
I mean, it's like the financial sector, right? I mean, most of finance is run out of London, so that makes sense why there's so much damn money there.
London's prosperity and that of southeast England is atypical for the country. This small area makes up nearly half the UK's GDP while having about a third of its population. If one were to...
Wait a second. London has... I thought that London for sure had more than a third of the population just because of how big the city is. I don't know. For some reason in my head, I thought it was like maybe half, but...
While having about a third of its population. If one were to amputate London's output, it would reduce British living standards by 14%.
It was almost 9 years ago to the day when the question of where Britain would rank among the US states for economic heft first became a thing. In an article for The Spectator, Fraser Nelson calculated that on a gross domestic product per capita basis, and after adjusting for price differences, the UK would sit in 49th place out of the 50 US states, narrowly squeezing in ahead of Mississippi. I just said Mississippi. Okay, I believe that, but all right, let's see where he was going with it.
It would reduce British living standards by 14%, just enough to slip ahead of the US state of Mississippi. Yeah, the UK has seen better days. The last 10 years...
I just want to hear that one more time.
While having about a third of its population. If one were to amputate London's output, it would reduce British living standards by 14%.
That's where I missed it, where he said if you didn't have London there.
Just enough to slip ahead of the US state of Mississippi. Yeah, the UK has seen better days. The last 10 years have been particularly tough. Real disposable income, which is income after taxes and benefits, has remained almost unchanged. The cost of goods and services has gone up. Compared to
identical to what's happened in America as well. Wages have not moved, yet expenses have skyrocketed. And I mean, we can all point to when it happened in 2020 to 2021, when that major crisis happened around the world. Crisis, you could say, which I feel happened for a reason.
A decade ago, people can buy less with their income. Meanwhile, productivity is low, one of the lowest of any major economy, and housing has become nearly unaffordable, with the UK holding the record for the highest number of homeless people in the developed world. The cause for these issues is rooted...
Okay, it's crazy because I've seen maybe like 4 videos now on England and London as well, and it's always so bright, and then there's always this stuff that's going on behind what they put out there in front.
Number of homeless people in the developed world. The cause for these issues is rooted in past political decisions. Britain has slumbered and stumbled its way through a number of setbacks. Now, the crisis has become endemic with no quick fix in sight. When you think about it, it's ironic. The UK was the first country to industrialize. Now it stands to become the first to deindustrialize. Seen from a larger angle, Britain's economy is on a downward trajectory. Prices are rising too fast. Just recently, housing prices rose by more than £2,200 in a month. Unfortunately, this wasn't widely reported in the media. Looking at things from all angles is what we do, and Ground News provides us with invaluable insights to do exactly that.
Okay, I've heard about that.
That's why we reached out to them to sponsor this video. In fact, reading this on Ground News, I can see only 10 sources covered it, which goes to show how overlooked this subject is. What's more, less than 10% of the outlets were from government sources. One might suppose governments don't want to talk about complications at home. Now, our type of content is not really suitable for YouTube. The algorithm deems it too controversial, and so many of our videos go without monetization. That's why we rely on sponsors to keep producing these videos. We've personally used and worked with Ground News for years, and they've stepped up every time we needed support. In fact, we have our own
Ground News, hit me up, because if their videos aren't getting monetized, mine certainly will not, even though I don't make anything anyway, but
feed on Ground News. Here, you get breaking news on geopolitics and even blind spot stories that the media isn't covering. Our missions align. So I encourage you to check it out at ground.news/Caspian.
Check it out, you guys.
I recommend subscribing to the Vantage plan. Our link gets you 40% off. Keep in mind that by subscribing, you are directly supporting our channel.
Cool.
Not long ago, Britain was considered one of the world's most prosperous nations and a prime destination for skilled professionals seeking to advance their careers.
Yeah.
Today, not so much. The state is under incredible socio-economic strain, more so than people realize. 3 back-to-back geopolitical shockwaves have left it with a colossal debt: Brexit, COVID, and the Ukraine war. The catalyst, however, dates to 2008, when the financial crisis introduced long-lasting effects. Like everyone else, Britain was deeply injured, but the way it handled the fallout set it apart from the rest of the developed world. After borrowing roughly £141 billion to bail out British banks, the government opted for austerity measures instead of investing in fiscal and social policies. There were no significant tax cuts or minimum wage increases. There was no inflation control, no housing assistance.
You would think, with how much inflation has actually gone up, getting on the topic of minimum wage increases, you know, it's like, yes, if we raise the minimum wage, then technically everyone's wages go up, because if minimum wage goes up, the person that was making £80,000 a year is now going to be requesting more money because, hey, minimum wage went up. I could just go work down at this place with way less skills and way less experience and make the same amount that I'm making now. So essentially all wages go up. But the caveat is inflation has gone up so damn much that it's like, yeah, we should have raised the minimum wage. With how much the cost of living has gone up, minimum wage should have been going up as well. And it hasn't. I know it hasn't for us here in the States. I don't think we've had a minimum wage increase, like a federal one. It's over a decade, I think. So it's pretty wild. And I mean, just the cost of everything is literally double. Like my home, the guy that bought my home, or the guy originally that bought it from the builder, bought this house, I think for around 300, maybe it was less than that. It was like $285,000 or $300,000. I bought it 3 years after him and paid $460,000. Like, income didn't go up that much, you know? It's insane. So, and I know there's going to be a ton of people in the comments that are debating both sides, and I'm not really here trying to pick a side. I'm just trying to understand this channel's viewpoint of everything that's going on. So,
no job creation programs, you get the point. For ordinary citizens, the consequences were devastating. Real household income dropped and then flatlined for the next 15 years. In economic terms, this is known as a lost decade. For added perspective, in 2007, the average British household was 8% less prosperous than those in Norway and just 6% behind those in the United States. In the years following, the deficit grew substantially. Today, British households sit 20% behind Norway and 16% behind the US in terms of real income. This drop in living standards is felt vividly among the middle class. Real household income is a fundamental driver of economic activity. It encourages consumer spending and improves living standards, all of which contribute to economic growth. In Britain, however, the government prioritized corporate interests above all else. But even here, in the corporate world, the gains were mostly short-term. The productivity rate was left on the back burner, and no significant investments were made in this domain. For context, increasing productivity is one of the most efficient ways to grow an economy. But, contrary to popular belief, improving productivity does not mean working harder. Instead, the point is to boost economic output without increasing the amount of work. So, when an agriculture-driven economy switches to manufacturing microchips, productivity increases because the tech industry is more profitable and has greater margins. Ergo, the workforce is getting more out of it for the same amount of labor. That's why
just imagine with what's happening with AI and tech right now, like where are we heading? Like where are we going? Oh gosh. I just feel like we're just going down a road that I don't like, that I don't see any way that it's going to be positive for the population. They're going to have to do something with like universal basic income. Although I am not like a proponent of it, I just don't see any other way, really. Like, and sorry, I'm not as pausing as much here. I'm just really trying to absorb this information. This is wild. It's very similar to kind of what's happening here as well, though, so it hits home.
Japan is turning farmland into factories. It adds to productivity and ultimately improves the economy. In the UK, productivity output per capita debilitated after the 2008 crisis due to a lack of investment. This chart by the London School of Economics puts things into perspective. Before the crisis, productivity was growing at nearly 2% annually.
Yeah.
After the crisis, however, it weakened substantially, changing a trend that had been in motion since the 1980s.
24%
The
lower.
British workforce now has the second lowest productivity rate among the G7 economies, whereas before the 2008 crisis, it was second only to the US. The simultaneous effects of sluggish real household income and low productivity explain a lot about the performance of the British economy. It is essentially fighting for its life. Britain's lost decade happened so casually, so indifferently, that none of its political parties acknowledged it, let alone addressed it. There was no political discourse on this subject that was affecting millions of households. But it was a crisis nonetheless, and so the discourse expressed itself in the form of Brexit. However, the uncertainty over Brexit made a bad situation even worse. It had a particularly sharp effect on direct foreign investment. According to the Bank of England, Brexit reduced investment by 25%, measured from 2016 to 2021.
Jeez.
What's more, soon after Brexit, the onset of COVID exacerbated the economic crisis that was brewing underneath. The government stepped in and borrowed an additional £280 billion in its response to the coronavirus. This was deemed necessary to get the nation through the pandemic. But here's the thing, most of the COVID bailout was borrowed when interest rates were at historic lows, sitting around 0.1%. At the time, repayments were expected to be relatively manageable, and this might have been true were it not for the final nail in the coffin, the Ukraine war. The minute
There's a nail in the coffin. Use my term I just used.
the Russians began their full-scale assault, access to Russian oil and gas was halted by sanctions and trade restrictions. At the same time, an energy crisis started brewing, and the cost of living jumped across Europe. The crisis hit close to home. British households were projected to pay 3 times the previous price just to heat their homes during the winter. much of the public was anxious. So the British government intervened again. This time, it was one of Europe's most generous in financial support. Between 60 billion and 100 billion pounds in additional spending went straight into Britain's debt. The damage to households was mild, but the bailout gave the UK its biggest increase in debt as a share of its GDP. The synthesized pandemic crisis and energy
Debt. All I gotta say is buy Bitcoin. If y'all don't own any Bitcoin, buy some.
crisis pushed inflation rates to new highs. In response, central banks ramped up the interest rate. For ordinary citizens, this meant that mortgage payments went up overnight by hundreds of pounds.
Jeez.
Meanwhile, for the government, the high interest rate added additional billions to the national debt. While before, debt repayments were believed to be relatively manageable, after the energy crisis, debt became increasingly expensive to pay off.
Yep.
Servicing debt jumped from £40 billion per year to about £100 billion per year.
Holy cow.
That is a staggering £60 billion increase in spending,
That's
which
insane.
is nearly the entire British defense budget.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, although admirably, Britain's support to Ukraine essentially broke its economy. Britain's debt interest bill is now the country's second largest item of spending. The surge in debt has reduced available funds by tens of billions of pounds, limiting spending on other items. Nearly all the country's public services are affected by it, which then depreciates the quality public services can provide.
This is just, I'm not British. This isn't my country. I can resonate with some of the feelings though that some of you may have from this, and let me know in the comments if some of you are like, hey, things are better than ever, everything's completely fine, this video is propaganda, like whatever you want to say, like drop it in there. I'm just kind of viewing it from outside in, but if it's anything with what has happened here, especially in like the last 5 years, you know, it's been a struggle for a lot of people, and it just doesn't seem like anyone has a solution for it. Like everyone just keeps trying to solve it with, I don't even want to say it.
At its core, economics is about more than markets and money alone. It is about understanding the choices people make and how demographics drive those decisions. Economics is essentially the study of people, not just numbers. After the COVID lockdowns subsided and life returned to normal, every advanced economy witnessed a surge in the workforce. People found jobs and moved on with their lives. This chart shows the change in economic activity among the G7 nations between
Let me look at that again. Percentage of working age
shows
population.
the change in economic activity.
Okay, went up. Dang. Yeah, 2019 to 2023 for Italy. That's a huge jump.
Among the G7 nations between 2019 and 2023. Britain stands out. Its workforce never recovered. It just stayed low. A smaller workforce has all sorts of ripple effects. It means less taxes to pay for services like healthcare and greater expenditures on social benefits. It also means people have less money to spend, which hurts businesses.
You guys added a lot of people into the country as well, right? That are now taking from the social services. Is that correct? Pretty sure that like that's going to put a strain on everything.
Number of jobs available in an economy. So the consequences go full circle. But Britain's workforce problem goes much deeper than the missing 1%. Officially, unemployment in Britain is low by historical standards, sitting at 4.4%, which amounts to 1.5 million people.
Damn.
But reality paints a different picture. Britain's workforce is missing a staggering 11 million people. The government doesn't consider it unemployment though, calling it economically inactive instead. The reasoning is that this
What the hell does economically inactive mean? Like unemployed, right?
though, calling
call a
it
spade a spade.
economically inactive instead. The reasoning is that this group, amounting to 9.4 million people, is technically not looking for work or is available to start a job. The Office for National Statistics
So they're just like fudging their data. Am I getting that wrong? Like you make up a new way of labeling a certain amount of people that are unemployed by labeling them something different. So then when you look at the stats, you can go, no, we still have a 4 point, whatever it was, 2% unemployment rate. Seems a little deceptive.
About 2.1 million, aged between 16 and 24, are students and thus economically inactive.
Okay,
About
well,
3.5 million of those over 50 years old are out of the workforce due to sickness and early retirement. Meanwhile, at least 1 million people aged between 25 and 49 years do not work because of caring responsibilities. A workforce missing 11 million people is no small matter.
No,
but
that's
businesses
huge.
need to keep running regardless. This puts tremendous pressure on the government, and one way to offset the difference is by opening the borders. So British lawmakers did just that. More people from outside the UK immigrated to
the work visa issues by region. Who's the highest here? Asia? South Asia? You got a lot of countries here that are coming in. Americans, where are we at? The brown line. Okay.
the country to work, with South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa standing out. These migrant workers fill the gaps left by a reduced workforce. But simultaneously, the rapid and large-scale influx of immigrants has raised social tensions within the nation. People feel threatened by the changing ethnic demographics, and some lawmakers exploit such moods to score political goals.
I've seen this guy before, this guy right here. I think I seen him on X one time. Like came through my feed, but I don't even know his name.
Exploit such moods to score political goals. In early August 2024, anti-immigration protests and riots rocked Britain, affecting over 20 towns. While the riots have peaked, addressing the origins
I'd never heard anything about any of this.
or anti-immigration protests and riots rocked Britain, affecting over 20 towns. While the riots have
20
peaked,
towns.
addressing the origins will take much longer to fix. In its entirety, Britain's economic chronicle, marked by a continuous decline, illustrates how one crisis triggers another and yet another, and ultimately leads to a chain of events from which there is no immediate relief. This is the bed that was made, and now people must sleep in it. On the plus side, every nation goes through ups and downs, and the UK is no exception. London is still one of the wealthiest and most innovative cities on the planet. Eventually, things will get better. But until then, Britain will function like a third world economy attached to London.
All right. If you guys want to check them out, Caspian Report, I'll put the link to the video in the description. A lot of stuff that I have not heard before, especially I didn't know that you guys had like protests in 20 different cities and towns. I had no idea that ever happened. But I mean, we've had similar issues here with immigration. Obviously, everyone knows American politics and what's going on, but yeah. So, all right, this was pretty eye-opening. I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this. You know, what's going on? What do you think? Is there solutions? You know, I have faith that the UK, if most of this is true, is going to get out of it. Like, you guys have been around for thousands of years. You'll be fine. It's just finding the right solutions, right? So, all right, appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.